Hello there, my sleepy citizens. Tonight, we journey into the shadowed streets of Gotham City, where mysteries lurk and the Dark Knight stands vigilant against the forces of chaos. We bring you tales of Batman, uncovering different sides of the man behind the mask. And as our journey through these stories winds down, a calm ambience of Gotham's streets will carry you throughout the night, bringing you to restful sleep without interruptions from any ads. If you enjoy these tales, please be sure to give us a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what story you'd like to hear next. But for now, let's get cozy and step into the world of Gotham. Rain fell in sheets across Gotham City, each drop carrying the grime of urban life back to earth. The sound created a constant background hush, nature's own white noise drowning out the usual cacophony of city existence. From his perch atop the abandoned Janus Cosmetics building, Batman watched the docks through lenses designed to pierce the thickening fog. The weather had transformed Gotham's industrial shoreline into a world of shadows and silhouettes, perfect conditions for those who preferred their business to remain unseen. Thermal imaging shows 12 figures at the East Warehouse. Alfred's calm voice delivered the information through Batman's cowl. They've maintained position for the last hour. No visible weapons, but body language suggests they're waiting rather than conversing. Batman didn't respond verbally, merely adjusting his position slightly. Alfred understood the silence. Communication between them had evolved beyond the necessity of words. After years of partnership, the absence of response conveyed acknowledgement better than any spoken confirmation. The rain intensified, droplets tapping against Batman's armor in an irregular rhythm. Across the bay, the skeletal outlines of loading cranes loomed like prehistoric creatures frozen in the mist. This particular section of the docks had remained officially closed for months, damaged in the last major storm surge and deemed too costly to repair immediately. The city's budget priorities lay elsewhere. A convenient oversight for those who found abandoned spaces useful. Movement at the north entrance, Alfred noted, his voice measured and low. Single vehicle, lights off. Black sedan, windows tinted beyond legal limits. Batman's enhanced vision caught the subtle disturbance in the rain pattern as the car glided to a stop. The driver remained inside while 3 figures emerged from the passenger side, moving with the confident precision of those accustomed to operating in darkness. They carried no visible weapons, yet their cautious approach to the warehouse spoke volumes about the nature of their visit. For weeks, Batman had been tracking shifts in Gotham's criminal ecosystem. Unlike the usual territorial disputes, marked by gunfire, explosions, and dramatically staged bodies, this conflict moved like fog itself, silent, pervasive, leaving no evidence behind. Crime scenes without crimes, territories changing hands without battles, influence transferring without a single reported threat. This silence was precisely what had drawn Batman's attention. In Gotham, quiet rarely meant peace. It meant someone had found a more efficient way to instill fear. The car matches the description of one seen at the Burnley shipping office last Thursday, Alfred continued. The night their security systems experienced that unfortunate malfunction. Batman remembered. An entire shipping company's digital infrastructure had mysteriously reset itself, erasing 3 months of cargo manifests and employee records. By morning, the company had new management, the previous owners suddenly responsive to buyout offers they'd been rejecting for years. No threats, no violence, just the quiet rewriting of Gotham's commercial landscape. The three figures reached the warehouse entrance, where they were met by two larger shadows that materialized from the doorway. No words appeared to be exchanged, yet a clear communication occurred through subtle gestures. Professional, disciplined, the kind of operation that required extensive preparation and absolute trust among participants. "I've isolated ambient audio," Alfred said. "Nothing beyond the rain and dock equipment. Whatever communication is happening, it's entirely non-verbal." Batman shifted his position, preparing to move closer. The familiar weight of the grapnel gun settled in his hand, ready to carry him across the expanse of misty air between buildings. Before he could fire, however, his enhanced vision caught a flicker of movement several warehouses north, a shadow detaching itself from deeper shadows. "Alfred, there's someone else watching this meeting," Batman sub-vocalized, the cowl's sensitive microphone picking up words spoken barely above a breath. Cross-referencing with known positions, Alfred replied after a brief pause. "No known GCPD surveillance operations tonight. Most are occupied with the mayor's security detail across town." Batman's lenses zoomed in, cutting through layers of rain and mist to focus on the distant observer. The figure moved with practiced stealth, positioning themselves for optimal sight lines while maintaining cover. Professional training evident in every economical movement. "Detective Montoya," Batman confirmed as the figure briefly passed through a diffused cone of security lighting. "Working alone." Alfred's sigh carried a weight of understanding. "Considering the recent internal affairs investigations, I imagine official channels aren't particularly receptive to her concerns at present." The GCPD's corruption problems had intensified in recent months, coinciding with the silent reshuffling of Gotham's criminal hierarchies. Too many coincidences for Batman's liking. Montoya had been vocal about her suspicions, which had predictably resulted in her reassignment to mundane cases that kept her away from organized crime investigations. Yet here she was, conducting unauthorized surveillance in the rain, either driven by stubborn dedication to justice or pursuing a personal lead, possibly both. Batman respected her persistence, though it potentially complicated tonight's operation. The warehouse door opened fully, and the gathered figures began to move inside. Whatever meeting had been arranged was transitioning to its next phase, away from potential outside observation. Batman needed to get closer to understand what was happening in this silent gathering that warranted such secrecy. "I'm moving in," he informed Alfred. "Keep tracking Montoya's position." "Of course, sir. I've also been analyzing the pattern of security camera failures throughout the district. There's a methodical sequence that suggests a rolling blackout of surveillance. Whatever is happening in that warehouse, someone has ensured it will occur in a temporary blind spot of precisely 8 minutes. Batman fired the grapnel line, the sound of its deployment muffled by a particularly heavy surge of rainfall. The line caught securely, and he launched himself into the open space between buildings, his cape billowing briefly before he controlled its surface area to guide his descent. He landed on the warehouse roof with practiced silence, moving immediately to a ventilation shaft that intelligence suggested would provide both access and audio observation capabilities. The metal grate removed with minimal effort, its security features long since surrendered to Gotham's persistent corrosion. Batman lowered himself into the narrow passage, the confines of the shaft a familiar discomfort he barely registered anymore. The sound of rainfall diminished as he descended deeper into the building's skeletal infrastructure, replaced by the subtle vibrations of movement below. The shaft opened into a maintenance crawl space above what had once been the warehouse's main storage area. Through grated flooring, Batman could observe the gathering below without exposing his position. What he saw confirmed his suspicions about the nature of this meeting. 12 figures stood in a rough circle, their attention focused on a man whose pristine white suit contrasted sharply with the decaying industrial setting. Roman Sionis' black mask. Though tonight he wore no mask at all, his exposed face carried the confidence of someone who no longer feared identification. A man who believed himself untouchable by conventional law enforcement. Black Mask held no weapon, made no threatening gestures. He simply stood, occasionally making deliberate hand movements that the others observed with intense focus. Around him, representatives from Gotham's various criminal factions maintained respectful distances from each other. Rivals who would normally never share space without violence were cooperating in this strange, silent conclave. "I have visual on the meeting," Batman whispered. "Black Mask is conducting some kind of silent briefing. Representatives from the Maroni, Falcone, and Odessa operations are present, along with several independent contractors I recognize from weapons trafficking cases. Curious company," Alfred commented. "These are factions that have been actively eliminating each other for generations. Their cooperation defies established patterns." Below, Black Mask removed a small device from his pocket, a simple tablet computer. He tapped its surface several times, then turned it to display something to the assembled group. From Batman's angle, he couldn't see the screen, but the reaction was immediate and uniform, solemn nods of understanding and acceptance. One by one, the representatives approached Black Mask, accepting what appeared to be small data devices passed discreetly from hand to hand. No words were exchanged, no questions asked. The choreography of their movements suggested this wasn't the first such meeting. This group had established protocols, understood expectations. "Alfred, something's happening with the building's power system," Batman noticed as subtle changes in the ambient electrical field triggered sensors in his cowl. "Confirming," Alfred responded after a moment. "The entire block just went dark on city monitoring systems. Backup generators should be engaging for essential services, but all networked cameras and audio monitoring devices would be temporarily disabled." Below, as if on cue, several of the assembled figures produced handheld scanning devices, methodically sweeping the warehouse interior. Looking for surveillance equipment, Batman realized, or perhaps, more concerningly, looking for him. "They're scanning for electronic signatures," Batman observed. "Professional counter-surveillance equipment." One of the scanners paused, its operator looking upward toward the maintenance crawl space. Batman remained perfectly still, the suit's stealth systems working to minimize any detectable energy signature. After a tense moment, the scanner moved on, its operator apparently satisfied. Black Mask made another series of hand gestures, pointing toward different areas of the city on a large map that one of his associates had unfolded across a makeshift table. Each gesture was acknowledged with nods from specific representatives. Territory being assigned, Batman realized, a silent redistribution of Gotham's criminal geography without the usual bloodshed such changes required. "I need to get closer," Batman decided. "Something about this doesn't follow Black Mask's established patterns." "I should note that Detective Montoya appears to be attempting the same," Alfred informed him. "Thermal imaging shows she's approaching the west entrance. Given the level of security consciousness displayed by this group, her detection seems inevitable." Batman recalculated immediately. Montoya was a skilled detective, but she lacked his equipment and training for this type of infiltration. If discovered, she would become an immediate liability, potentially a fatality. Black Mask's operations rarely left witnesses. "Diverting to intercept Montoya," Batman confirmed, already moving back through the ventilation system toward an exit point that would allow him to reach the detective before she compromised her position. The rain continued its relentless percussion against the warehouse exterior as Batman emerged onto a narrow maintenance walkway. From this vantage, he could see Montoya's approach, careful, professional, but lacking the specialized equipment necessary to detect the sophisticated security perimeter Black Mask's team had established. She was moments away from triggering a proximity sensor hidden beneath a seemingly ordinary puddle. Batman launched himself from the walkway, cape extended to control his descent through the rain-filled air. He landed silently behind Montoya, closing the distance between them with practiced efficiency. "Detective," he spoke just loudly enough to be heard over rainfall, his hand already moving to intercept her next step. To her credit, Montoya didn't visibly startle, though her hand instinctively moved toward her service weapon before recognition registered. "I might have known you'd be here," she muttered, withdrawing her foot from its path toward the hidden sensor. "We guess we're both interested in the sudden peace and quiet among Gotham's finest citizens." "This operation is beyond GCPD resources," Batman stated simply. "Black Mask has implemented counter-surveillance measures that would detect standard police equipment." Montoya's expression hardened slightly. "Bold of you to assume I'm here officially. Badge doesn't mean much these days, not when half the department is on someone's private payroll." She gestured toward the warehouse. "What's happening in there? Because whatever it is, it's connected to 3 of my witnesses disappearing and a dozen case files being corrupted beyond recovery." "A redistribution," Batman explained concisely. "Black Mask is consolidating control over Gotham's criminal operations without the usual territorial conflicts. No bullets, no bodies, just the strategic application of leverage and information." "Smart," Montoya acknowledged grimly. "Can't investigate crimes that technically never happen. No evidence, no case." She studied Batman's expression, or what little of it was visible. "But you didn't just happen to find me to share theories. What do you need?" "Information. You've been tracking the pattern longer than I have. What connected the witnesses who disappeared?" Montoya hesitated only briefly before answering. "D-May all worked for the same private security firm 5 years ago, Sage Tech Solutions. Company went bankrupt after some corporate espionage scandal, but its employees scattered throughout Gotham's security sector. My witnesses were all positioned at companies or organizations that recently experienced those convenient system failures." Batman processed this new information against what he already knew. They weren't random targets, they were loose ends. People who might recognize whatever method Black Mask is using to compromise security systems. "That's my theory," Montoya agreed, "but I can't prove it without..." She stopped abruptly, attention shifting to something over Batman's shoulder. "We have movement. 3 o'clock, loading bay." Batman turned, enhanced vision penetrating the rain to confirm Montoya's observation. The meeting was concluding, participants departing through different exits at carefully timed intervals. Black Mask himself remained inside, seemingly content to let his associates depart first, another deviation from his typically paranoid protocols. "I need to continue surveillance on Black Mask," Batman decided. "You should withdraw before their security sweep expands to this perimeter." Montoya looked like she wanted to argue, but ultimately nodded. "Fine, but we need to compare notes on this." She reached into her pocket, producing a small data drive. "This contains everything the GCPD officially doesn't know about the recent coincidental system failures. Might help you see the pattern I've been tracking." Batman accepted the drive with a slight nod. "I'll contact you when I have something concrete. Through Gordon, I assume." Montoya's tone carried a hint of weariness. "He's one of the few I still trust, but his office is definitely compromised. Careful what channels you use." With that warning, she withdrew into the shadows, moving with the practiced stealth of someone who had learned to navigate Gotham's dangers long before earning a detective's badge. Batman watched until he was certain she had cleared the warehouse's security perimeter before turning his attention back to the primary target, Alfred. Montoya provided additional intelligence, Batman subvocalized. Cross-section any connections between Sagitech Solutions and recent security system failures across Gotham. Focus on personnel overlap and proprietary technologies. Already initiating the search, Alfred confirmed. And Batman? The timing of those system failures creates a rather concerning pattern when mapped across the city grid. They're not random targets. They're creating a sequence of blind spots throughout Gotham's surveillance infrastructure, temporary ones now, but if the affected systems were permanently compromised, Black Mask would have invisible corridors throughout the city. Batman finished the thought, pathways where his operations could move without digital witnesses. The implications were significant. Most modern criminal investigations relied heavily on digital evidence, surveillance footage, electronic transactions, communication records. By systematically creating gaps in this digital observation network, Black Mask was essentially making his operations ghost-like, impossible to track through conventional methods. Inside the warehouse, the last of the representatives was departing, leaving Black Mask alone with just 2 associates, bodyguards based on their positioning and alertness. The crime lord retrieved his tablet, studying something on its screen with apparent satisfaction before making a gesture to his guards. They moved toward the exit, suggesting their business was concluded. Batman needed to know what information had been distributed on those data devices. Whatever Black Mask's next move entailed, the details had been shared in that meeting, passed silently from hand to hand, in digital form rather than spoken aloud where they might be intercepted. As Black Mask and his guards moved toward their vehicle, Batman plotted an interception route. The sedan that had delivered the crime lord would likely have digital systems of its own, systems that might be accessed and cloned without their knowledge. It wasn't ideal, but it offered a potential intelligence opportunity with minimal risk of alerting Black Mask to Batman's surveillance. "I'm moving to intercept Black Mask's vehicle," Batman informed Alfred. "Going to attempt to clone any onboard systems once they're mobile, understood? I'll prepare the Batmobile to shadow their route at a safe distance. If I might suggest the southeast approach, the infrastructure there creates natural electromagnetic interference that might mask your digital intrusion." Batman acknowledged with a slight affirmative sound, already moving along the warehouse exterior, using the rain and darkness as natural cover. The timing would need to be precise. Black Mask's security protocols were thorough, and any detection would likely result in the immediate destruction of whatever digital information they were carrying. The sedan's engine hummed to life, a barely audible sound beneath the persistent rainfall. Batman positioned himself at the edge of the property, where the access road curved sharply before joining the main thoroughfare. The vehicle would need to slow at that point, providing a brief window of opportunity. As predicted, the sedan decelerated at the curve, its tires sending up gentle sprays of water from rain-infilled potholes. Batman launched himself from his position, the momentum carrying him precisely to the vehicle's roof. The impact was controlled, dispersed through his suit's systems to register as nothing more than perhaps a heavy raindrop to those inside. Magnetically secured to the roof, Batman produced a specialized device designed by Lucius Fox specifically for automotive systems infiltration. It established connection with the vehicle's onboard computers within seconds, beginning the process of cloning data without triggering security alert. "Connection established," Batman confirmed quietly, initiating passive data capture. "Receiving telemetry," Alfred acknowledged. Interesting, the vehicle's navigation system has recently calculated routes to 5 different locations across Gotham, all industrial or commercial properties that have changed ownership within the last month. Batman absorbed this information as the device continued its work. Potential targets for the next phase of whatever operation they're conducting. The sedan continued through Gotham's rain-slicked streets, its driver maintaining precise adherence to speed limits and traffic regulations, another hallmark of Black Mask's operations. Nothing that would draw unnecessary attention from law enforcement. After several minutes, the data capture completed its cycle, and Batman disengaged from the vehicle at the next suitable shadow. His departure from the sedan's roof was as undetectable as his arrival had been, leaving Black Mask and his associates unaware of the intelligence breach. Data capture complete, Batman confirmed as he landed in an alley, already moving toward the location where the Batmobile waited in stealth mode. Heading back now to analyze what we've collected. Very good, sir. I've taken the liberty of beginning preliminary analysis on Detective Montoya's data drive. The connections to Sagitech Solutions are quite illuminating. The company specialized in proprietary security integration systems, specifically creating master override protocols that could manage otherwise incompatible security platforms. Batman considered this as he reached the Batmobile, the vehicle's canopy sliding open silently to admit him. The perfect tool set for someone looking to systematically compromise Gotham's fragmented security infrastructure. Precisely, Alfred agreed. And most concerningly, Sagitech's intellectual property was never formally sold when the company dissolved. Their most advanced protocols simply disappeared from official records. The Batmobile moved through Gotham's rain-drenched streets with near-silent efficiency, its systems automatically plotting the most discreet route back toward the cave. Batman allowed his mind to process the accumulating evidence, seeking the pattern that would reveal Black Mask's ultimate objective: silent meetings, digital information exchange, systematic security compromises, former security specialists disappearing, a coordinated reallocation of criminal territories without conflict. All pieces of a puzzle that suggested Black Mask was implementing something far more sophisticated than the usual power grab. He's creating a shadow infrastructure, Batman realized aloud. Not just blind spots in the city's surveillance, but an entire parallel system of control, digital, physical, and human assets positioned to allow complete freedom of movement and operation, invisible to conventional monitoring. A concerning assessment, Alfred responded after a moment, and if accurate, it would represent a significant evolution in organized crime methodology. The question becomes, to what end? Batman had been asking himself the same question. Black Mask's operations had always been profit-driven, focused on weapons trafficking, protection rackets, and narcotics. This new approach required significant resource investment with no immediate financial return, unusual for someone with Sionis's established patterns. "We're missing something," Batman acknowledged as the Batmobile approached the hidden entrance to the cave system, in a key element that would explain why Black Mask is suddenly interested in silence rather than intimidation. The cave welcomed the vehicle with its familiar atmosphere of enclosed stillness, the distant sound of water the only accompaniment to the Batmobile's arrival. As Batman emerged, Alfred was already working at the main computer array, multiple screens displaying different aspects of the accumulated intelligence. "I've been conducting further analysis of the patterns formed by these security compromises," Alfred explained, gesturing to a map of Gotham where numerous points were highlighted in sequential order. When viewed chronologically, they create something rather like a closing net around specific infrastructure nodes. Batman studied the visualization, seeing the pattern immediately. isolating the GCPD's evidence storage facilities, creating blind spots in every approach route, compromising every system that might record movement in or out. Indeed, Alfred confirmed. And according to Detective Montoya's notes, the physical security at those facilities has experienced significant personnel changes in recent months. Many veterans reassigned, replaced with newer officers who coincidentally all have connections to private security firms recently acquired by shell companies. The picture was becoming clearer but still incomplete. Black Mask is positioning for a major evidence theft, but why now? What changed in his operational priorities? Alfred brought up another screen, this one displaying case files extracted from Montoya's data drive. Perhaps this offers some insight. 3 months ago, federal authorities seized a substantial cache of exotic materials from one of Black Mask's shell companies. The items were logged into GCPD evidence, pending transfer to more secure federal facilities. Batman scanned the inventory list, understanding dawning immediately. Prototype metamaterials, developed for military applications. Theoretical components for next-generation stealth technology. He looked up from the screen. With these materials, Black Mask could develop equipment that would render conventional security systems completely ineffective. Not just compromised, but fundamentally blind to his operations. Creating a truly invisible criminal empire, Alfred concluded, his expression grave. No wonder he's invested so heavily in silence and discretion. The potential return would justify almost any expenditure. Batman was already moving toward the equipment area, mind racing through necessary preparations. When is the federal transfer scheduled? According to these files, 3 days from now. A narrow window, but sufficient for countermeasures if we act quickly. 3 days to prevent Black Mask from acquiring technology that could fundamentally change the balance of power in Gotham. 3 days to counter a plan that had clearly been in development for months, orchestrated with meticulous attention to detail, and executed with uncharacteristic patience. We need to warn Gordon, Batman decided, but carefully, through channels Black Mask won't be monitoring. Alfred nodded, already reaching for secure communications equipment. I believe our mutual friend at the clock tower might be of assistance in that regard. Her systems operate entirely independently from GCPD networks. As Alfred established the secure connection, Batman returned his attention to the evidence they'd gathered. Something still bothered him about the operation's structure, some element that didn't align with Black Mask's established methodologies, regardless of the potential prize. The silence, he said finally. It's too complete, too disciplined. Black Mask's operations have always involved a certain theatrical element. He wants targets to know who's responsible for their suffering. This level of restraint isn't consistent with his psychological profile. Alfred paused in his communications work, considering. Perhaps Mr. Sionis has experienced some form of personal growth, he suggested with the faint hint of dry humor that occasionally surfaced even in serious situations. Or he's not working alone, Batman countered. This operation has multiple architectural elements, the technical expertise for security systems, the psychological discipline for silent operations, the logistical precision for coordinating multiple criminal factions without conflict. It's too diverse for Black Mask's usual operation. A consortium, then, Alfred proposed. Multiple interests aligned for this particular endeavor? Batman shook his head slightly. Not aligned. Directed. Someone with leverage over Black Mask, pushing him toward methods outside his comfort zone. His mind ran through the possibilities, cataloging potential puppet masters with both the capability and motivation to manipulate Gotham's criminal elite so effectively. The list was uncomfortably long. For now, we focus on the immediate threat. Batman decided. The evidence transfer needs to be secured. Once that's accomplished, we can pursue the question of who's pulling the strings. Alfred nodded, returning to his communications task with renewed purpose. Batman moved to another workstation, beginning the process of designing countermeasures for the security gaps Black Mask had so carefully engineered throughout the city. Time was limited, resources were stretched, but Gotham's safety depended on his ability to anticipate and neutralize threats before they fully materialized. Outside the cave, rain continued to fall across Gotham, wrapping the city in layers of mist and shadow. Somewhere within that shrouded landscape, Black Mask and his silent associates continued their preparations, unaware that their methodical operation had finally attracted the attention it had so carefully sought to avoid. As Batman worked, the cave's ambient sounds, water dripping from ancient stalactites, the distant flutter of bat wings, the soft hum of advanced technology, created a cocoon of focused calm around him. This was the true battlefield in modern Gotham, not streets and alleys, but information and intention, moves and countermoves, in a game where victory meant simply that ordinary citizens remained unaware a conflict had occurred at all. In 3 days, that silent war would reach its culmination. Batman would be ready, emerging from shadows to confront those who believed darkness was their ally. They had adopted the silent approach, thinking it would shield them from detection. They would learn what Batman had always known, that true mastery of silence wasn't about avoiding notice, but about striking from it with perfect, decisive timing. The rain fell, the city slept, and beneath it all, invisible currents of power shifted like fog across still water. For now, that was enough. The time for noise and light would come soon enough. The next 2 days passed in careful preparation and surveillance. Batman established watch points near each of the compromised security nodes, placing specialized equipment designed to detect and record intrusions that conventional systems would miss. Alfred maintained constant monitoring from the cave, correlating data from these sensors with Detective Montoya's ongoing intelligence gathering. Together they constructed a map of Black Mask's invisible corridors through Gotham's digital defenses. The pattern is becoming clearer, Alfred noted during one of their briefings. Black Mask's people are conducting what appear to be dry runs, moving through the compromised security zones in precise sequences, testing response times and surveillance gaps. Batman studied the visualization on the cave's main display. They're establishing timing, making sure their approach to the evidence facility will remain undetected. He pointed to several intersections where multiple security blind spots overlapped. These are their fallback positions, places they can retreat to if something goes wrong without being tracked. The sophistication of the operation continued to trouble him. This wasn't Black Mask's typical approach. It lacked the flamboyant cruelty that normally characterized his work. Someone else's influence remained evident in every careful detail, though the identity of this shadow partner remained elusive. Commissioner Gordon had been discreetly warned about the potential threat to the evidence transfer, though specific details were withheld for security reasons. He'd responded by ostensibly reducing security at the facility, a move that would appear as vulnerability to Black Mask's surveillance, but actually masked the placement of hand-selected officers Gordon personally trusted. On the night before the scheduled transfer, Batman conducted final preparations from a concealed position near the evidence storage facility. Rain continued to fall intermittently across Gotham, creating a constant ambient whisper that helped mask his movements as he verified sensor placements and escape routes. "Alfred, status report on perimeter monitoring," he requested quietly, scanning the surrounding buildings for any sign of Black Mask's advance team. "Our sensors operational," Alfred confirmed. "No suspicious activity detected yet. though I'm noting some interesting communications anomalies in the area. Brief electromagnetic pulses occurring at regular intervals, possibly some form of signal jamming test. Batman adjusted his cowl's sensors to scan for the anomalous signals. Location? Triangulating now, Alfred replied, after a brief pause. Approximately 2 blocks north of your position. Abandoned subway maintenance tunnels run beneath that area. Potential approach vector that would bypass most conventional security measures. The tunnels weren't on any of the maps they'd been monitoring. Batman filed this new information away, already adjusting tactical plans to account for this additional approach route. I'm going to investigate, maintain monitoring of primary targets, of course. Do be careful, sir. These tunnels don't appear in recent city infrastructure records. Their condition may be significantly compromised. Batman made his way north, moving across rooftops with practiced efficiency. The rain had lessened to a fine mist, enveloping the city in a gauzy shroud that diffused light sources and muffled sounds. Perfect conditions for covert operations, both his and potentially Black Mask's. The tunnel entrance was concealed behind a rusted maintenance door in an alley that had become a forgotten space between newer developments. The lock yielded easily to Batman's tools, revealing a narrow passage descending into darkness. Stale air carried the scent of dampness and decay. These tunnels had been abandoned for decades, left to slowly surrender to time and erosion. I've accessed historical subway planning documents, Alfred informed him as he began his descent. These tunnels were part of an expansion project abandoned during Gotham's financial crisis 40 years ago. They were never officially completed, but construction had progressed significantly before funding was cut, meaning they could potentially connect to multiple points throughout this district, Batman concluded, including areas near the evidence facility. Precisely. I'm attempting to reconstruct the planned route now, but records are fragmentary at best. Batman continued deeper into the tunnel system, cowl automatically adjusting to the near-torpor darkness. The construction showed signs of hasty abandonment. Tools still lay where workers had left them decades ago, now encrusted with mineral deposits from years of water seepage. The tunnel floor was slick with moisture, requiring careful footing as he proceeded. After several hundred meters, the passage opened into what appeared to have been intended as a station concourse, a larger chamber where multiple tunnel branches converged. Recent activity was immediately evident. Fresh footprints disturbed the accumulated dust, and modern equipment had been installed at strategic points throughout the space. I've found their staging area, Batman reported, examining the equipment without touching it. Signal repeaters, motion sensors, communications gear. They are using these tunnels as their primary approach route. Can you determine which branch they're planning to use for the actual operation? Alfred asked. Batman studied the footprint patterns, noting which tunnel entrances showed the most recent activity. Southeast Passage shows heaviest use. That would lead them directly beneath the evidence facility's main building. He moved toward that tunnel, proceeding with increased caution. The passage narrowed considerably, suggesting it might have been planned as a maintenance access way rather than part of the main transit system. After approximately 50 meters, Batman encountered the first sign of recent structural modifications. A section of tunnel wall had been carefully removed, revealing a narrow vertical shaft ascending into darkness. They've created an access point, he observed, examining the workmanship. Professional quality. Load-bearing supports, minimized debris, sound-dampening materials around the edges. This wasn't rushed work, which suggests they've had access to these tunnels for some time, Alfred noted. Potentially months of preparation. Batman activated his cowl's scanning systems, mapping the vertical shaft. The shaft leads directly to a utility room in the evidence facility's basement level. According to the building plans, that room houses electrical junction boxes for the security systems. The perfect infiltration point, Alfred concluded. They could disable internal systems without ever passing through external security checkpoints. The discovery confirmed Batman's suspicions about the operation's sophistication. This wasn't opportunistic crime. It was meticulous, patient planning, executed with precision. He needed to adjust their countermeasures accordingly. We need to revise the defense strategy, Batman decided. Email won't be coming through any of the routes we've been monitoring. They'll emerge directly inside the secure perimeter. I'll alert Commissioner Gordon immediately, Alfred responded, though I imagine this complicates his personnel deployment considerably. Batman was already retracing his steps through the tunnel system, mind racing through tactical adjustments. Tell him to maintain the visible security presence exactly as planned. We don't want Black Mask surveillance to detect any changes. I'll handle the tunnel approach personally. Understood. What's your plan, if I may ask? I'm going to use their own strategy against them, Batman explained. Emerging from the tunnel entrance back into Gotham's misty night air, they've created a perfect infiltration route, one that bypasses all conventional security. Now we know exactly where they'll be and when. Alfred seemed to consider this. A rather elegant solution, I must admit, though it does place you at considerable risk, facing an unknown number of hostiles in an extremely confined space. I've faced worse odds, Batman replied simply, already moving toward his next preparation point. The night progressed with tense anticipation. Batman returned to the cave briefly to equip specialized gear for the tunnel operation, then positioned himself in the abandoned subway system well before the scheduled time of the evidence transfer. Hours passed in complete stillness and silence, a meditative stillness that allowed his senses to attune completely to the environment around him. Movement detected at the north tunnel entrance. Alfred's voice eventually broke the silence. Precisely on schedule. Thermal signatures indicate 5 individuals, moving with tactical spacing, Batman acknowledged with the barest sub-vocalization. Already aware of the approaching team, his position, carefully selected in a shadowed alcove near the vertical access shaft, provided both concealment and tactical advantage. From here, he could observe their final preparations before they ascended into the evidence facility. The approaching figures moved with disciplined silence, their equipment muffled to prevent any betraying sounds. They converged on the central chamber Batman had discovered earlier, performing final equipment checks before proceeding to the southeast tunnel. Their coordination spoke of extensive training and preparation. These weren't typical street criminals, but specialized operatives. Batman watched as they approached the vertical shaft, setting up equipment designed to assist their ascent without noise. Their leader, a tall figure whose face remained concealed behind advanced tactical gear, performed a final scan of the area with sophisticated detection equipment. For a brief moment, the scanner pointed directly at Batman's position. He remained perfectly still, the suit's stealth systems working to minimize any detectable signature. After what seemed like an eternity, the scanner moved on, its operator apparently satisfied. The infiltration team began their ascent, moving with practiced efficiency up the narrow shaft. Batman allowed the first 3 to pass before making his move. As the 4th operative prepared to climb, Batman struck, emerging from concealment with explosive speed, neutralizing the operative with a precisely applied nerve strike before they could alert their teammates. The 5th operative reacted immediately, reaching for a weapon, but Batman had anticipated this response. A well-placed batarang knocked the weapon aside, and a grapnel line wrapped around the operatives' legs, pulling them off balance before they could raise an alarm. With 2 opponents secured, Batman ascended the shaft rapidly, overtaking the remaining team members before they could emerge into the evidence facility. The confined space worked to his advantage, limiting their ability to maneuver or use their weapons effectively. One by one, he neutralized the remaining operatives, leaving them secured with reinforced restraints in the vertical shaft. Only the team leader remained, already emerging into the utility room above. Batman followed, prepared for the final confrontation, but the scene that greeted him was unexpected. The leader stood motionless in the center of the utility room, surrounded by Commissioner Gordon and 4 heavily armed officers, their weapons trained steadily on the intruder. "Right on time," Gordon commented dryly, nodding to Batman as he emerged from the shaft. "Your friend in the clock tower was very specific about when we should be waiting." The leader made no attempt to resist, slowly raising their hands in surrender. As Gordon's officers moved to secure them, Batman approached, finally able to see the face behind the tactical mask as it was removed. Not one of Black Mask's known associates. Not anyone Batman recognized from Gotham's extensive criminal databases. The face belonged to a woman with military bearing and cold, calculating eyes that showed no fear, only clinical assessment of the situation. "Interesting," she said quietly, her gaze fixed on Batman. "You weren't factored into our operational parameters." A slight smile touched her lip, an oversight that will be corrected in future iterations. "Who are you working for?" Batman demanded. The woman's expression remained professionally neutral. "You've interrupted one operation. The overall initiative remains intact." She glanced at Gordon and his officers with something approaching pity. "Gotham's traditional power structures are already obsolete. You simply haven't realized it yet." Before Batman could press further, Gordon intervened. "Save the cryptic warnings for the interrogation room. You and your team are facing enough charges to keep you occupied for several decades." As the woman was led away, Batman noticed something odd about her equipment. Subtle design elements that didn't match any known manufacturer. Military-grade components, but with modifications suggesting proprietary technology beyond what was commercially available. "Alfred?" he subvocalized. "The operation has been neutralized, but I'm not convinced this was actually Black Mask's team." "An interesting development," Alfred replied. "Detective Montoya has reported similar doubts. Black Mask was spotted across town during the infiltration attempt, meeting with several legitimate business owners. Most unusual timing for someone supposedly coordinating a major heist." Batman examined the equipment the team had carried, finding further inconsistencies. These aren't Black Mask's people. The equipment, the tactics, the discipline, all wrong for his operation. He secured a small device from the leader's equipment for later analysis. Someone wanted us to believe this was Black Mask's operation. They used his patterns, his known associates, but this team is something else entirely. "A false flag operation?" Alfred suggested. "Designed to direct your attention toward Mr. Sionis, while some other objective was pursued." "Possibly," Batman acknowledged. "Or this was simply the first move in a larger game, testing Gotham's defenses, learning our response patterns." Gordon approached as his officers completed securing the scene. "Not the usual suspects," he commented. "No gang tattoos, no criminal records we can find. Their fingerprints aren't in any system we have access to. Professional operatives," Batman confirmed. "Military background. Specialized training." Gordon frowned. "Military?" That opened some uncomfortable questions about who might be bankrolling this operation. "Questions that need answers," Batman agreed. "I'll continue investigating. In the meantime, the metamaterials should be transferred to federal custody immediately. Whatever their primary objective, those were definitely the target. As Gordon coordinated the evidence transfer, Batman returned to the tunnel system, examining the equipment the team had left behind. Each piece revealed the same disturbing pattern. Advanced technology with modifications, suggesting capabilities beyond standard specifications. Someone was deploying next-generation equipment in Gotham, using Black Mask's operations as cover for something more sophisticated. The rain had resumed outside, wrapping Gotham in its persistent grey embrace. Batman emerged from the tunnels into this familiar atmosphere, the city's nighttime landscape of shadows and reflections spreading before him like a living canvas. Somewhere within that urban tapestry, a new player was moving pieces into position. Someone with resources, patience, and a strategic vision that extended beyond immediate profit. For now, one operation had been thwarted. The dangerous materials remained secure, and 5 operatives were in custody. But Batman knew this was merely the opening move in what promised to be a complex confrontation. The true opponent remained hidden, their ultimate objectives unclear. As he moved through Gotham's rain-soaked shadows toward his next investigation point, Batman reflected on the strange silence that had characterized this entire affair. From Black Mask's uncharacteristically quiet reorganization of criminal territories to the disciplined silence of the infiltration team, something fundamental had shifted in how Gotham's darker elements operated. Silence could be a weapon, a strategy, or a warning. In this case, Batman suspected it might be all 3. The deliberate quiet before a storm whose true nature had yet to reveal itself. Whatever came next would emerge from these same shadows, shaped by hands that preferred to remain unseen. For tonight, the rain continued its gentle percussion across Gotham's countless surfaces, its rhythm a constant companion to those who moved through darkness with purpose. The city slept, unaware of the silent conflict that had unfolded beneath its streets, exactly as both sides had intended. Batman would continue his vigilance, watching and waiting for the next move in this evolving game of shadows. Some battles were won through direct confrontation, others through patient observation. This one, he sensed, would require both, and the wisdom to know when each approach served Gotham best. The rain fell, the city breathed, and beneath it all, invisible currents continued to flow, carrying whispers of changes yet to come. As Batman continued his patrol through Gotham's rain-soaked streets, the mystery of who had been pulling Black Mask's strings remained unsolved. The evidence suggested a new player moving through Gotham's criminal ecosystem, someone who preferred to operate in shadow and silence. But not all of Gotham's threats moved quietly. Some lurked in the deepest, most forgotten spaces beneath the city, where ancient stonework gave way to flooded tunnels, and the distant sounds of movement echoed through darkness. Reports had been surfacing of something massive, disturbing the underground waterways, something that left behind scaled impressions in the mud and torn maintenance equipment. Batman turned his attention toward the old catacombs beneath Gotham's East End. If Waylon Jones, Killer Croc, had returned to his underground domain, the silence Batman had been tracking would soon give way to the more primal sounds of ancient, predatory hunger. And in those dark, dripping tunnels, whispers carried further than anyone might expect. Rain fell in sheets across Gotham City, transforming its jagged skyline into a softened watercolor of grays and blacks. The seasonal downpours had persisted for days, overwhelming century-old drainage systems and sending countless gallons cascading into the forgotten spaces beneath the city. In the Batcave, Bruce Wayne studied a holographic map of Gotham's underground, his face illuminated by the cool blue glow of spreading water levels creeping through the ancient catacombs and tunnel networks. 7 people, he said quietly, his voice barely audible above the gentle patter of rain on the cave's natural ceiling. 7 people vanished in the past month. No bodies recovered, no ransom demands. Alfred approached with a steaming cup of tea, placing it carefully beside the workstation. And all disappeared near access points to the old Gotham underground, I presume. Bruce nodded, touching a control that highlighted several locations on the map. Red markers pulsed gently at seemingly random points across the city. A maintenance entrance near the docks, a storm drain in the Narrows, a defunct subway entrance sealed off since the 1940. The pattern was subtle at first. GCPD didn't connect them until the 5th disappearance. Curious, Alfred observed, studying the holographic display. The victims themselves share no obvious commonalities, none apparent in their backgrounds, Bruce replied, bringing up a series of portraits alongside the map. Different ages, occupations, social circles, but he expanded one file, revealing medical records. 4 of the 7 had recently sought treatment for various physical or mental health conditions that left them vulnerable, outsiders in their own way. Alfred's expression softened with understanding. You suspect Mr. Jones might be involved? Bruce didn't immediately answer, instead zooming in on the tunnels beneath the East End. The blue glow of rising water illuminated his features as he traced potential paths through the labyrinth of forgotten infrastructure. Waylon Jones hasn't been seen in months, he finally said. Not since the flooding began. Perhaps he simply retreated deeper underground, Alfred suggested. The flooding would make the lower tunnels more hospitable for someone of his particular needs. Bruce closed his eyes briefly, calling to mind everything he knew about Killer Croc. Waylon Jones, a man transformed by a rare genetic condition into something the world saw as monstrous. Driven into Gotham's shadows by fear and prejudice long before he'd committed his first crime. A predator, yes, but also a victim of circumstances beyond his control. I need to go down there, Bruce said quietly. Something's happening beneath Gotham and these people are somehow part of it. Alfred's concern was evident. The catacombs will be particularly treacherous after these rains. Even the old city maps don't account for recent structural deterioration. Bruce nodded, already moving toward where the Batsuit waited. That's why I'm taking the new sonic mapping equipment. It should provide real-time structural analysis. He paused, glancing back at the disappearance files still hovering above the workstation. These people deserve answers, Alfred. Whether they were taken, or whether they chose to vanish. The older man raised an eyebrow. You believe some might have gone willingly. I'm keeping all possibilities open, Bruce replied. Sometimes disappearing is the only freedom some people believe they have left. As Batman prepared to descend into Gotham's depths, the rain continued its gentle percussion against the city, washing away the day's troubles for some while revealing deeper secrets for others. The night had only begun its whispered conversation with the Dark Knight, a dialogue that would lead him through forgotten passages and into the murky moral waters where monsters and men were sometimes indistinguishable from one another. The service tunnel entrance had been officially sealed for decades, yet showed subtle signs of recent use. Scrapes along the rusted hinges, footprints partially washed away by seeping rainwater. Batman moved silently through the narrow passage, the only sound the occasional drip of water from the ceiling. His cowl's enhanced vision penetrated the darkness, revealing architectural features dating back to Gotham's earliest days. "The tunnel network appears stable in this section," he sub-vocalized to Alfred. "19th century construction, reinforced during the 1940s expansion. I'm receiving your mapping data," Alfred confirmed through the cow's communication system. "The original plans suggest this passage should connect to the old Mercantile District catacombs about half a kilometer ahead." Batman advanced carefully, each step measured and deliberate. The floor was slick with moisture, occasional pools reflecting his silhouette as he passed. The tunnel gradually widened, ceiling height increasing until he stood in what had once been a subterranean storage chamber. Crumbling brick archways led off in multiple directions, each opening a dark mouth into Gotham's forgotten history. Multiple diverging paths, Batman noted. The mapping system is detecting water movement through the eastern passage. He moved toward that archway, pausing as his enhanced hearing detected something beyond the gentle symphony of dripping water. A rhythmic sound, almost like breathing, echoing from somewhere deeper in the tunnel. Batman remained perfectly still, allowing his senses to filter through the ambient sounds until he could isolate the direction. "I'm not alone down here," he whispered. "Croc?" Alfred's voice carried tension despite his measured tone. "Unlikely, the breathing pattern is too rapid for someone of Jones' physiology." Batman knelt beside a particularly deep puddle, his gloved fingers brushing the surface. "There's something else, a scent in the water. Antiseptic." He collected a small sample in a vial from his utility belt, then continued through the eastern passage. The ceiling dropped lower here, forcing him to adopt a slight crouch. The passage curved gently downward, following the natural contours of Gotham's underground topography. The breathing sound had faded, but now other noises reached him, distant and muffled, but distinctly human. The passage opened suddenly into a much larger chamber, this one clearly natural rather than constructed. Stalactites hung from the ceiling, their tips glistening with moisture that collected and fell with hypnotic regularity. Batman moved into shadow, his dark silhouette blending with the cavern's natural features as he surveyed this unexpected space. Someone had been living here, recently. A makeshift sleeping area occupied one dry corner, simple supplies arranged with careful precision. A small collection of books, protected from the damp by a waterproof container. A medical kit, partially open, explaining the antiseptic scent he'd detected earlier. "I've found a campsite," Batman informed Alfred. "Recently occupied, professional medical supplies, but not hospital grade. Field equipment." "Curious?" Alfred replied. "Perhaps a medical professional among the missing persons?" Batman consulted his cowl's database. "Dr. Sarah Keeler, disappeared 12 days ago. Background in emergency medicine, last employed at Gotham General's outreach clinic servicing the homeless population." He examined the site more carefully, noting the organization of supplies, the dog-eared pages in a waterproofed journal. She's been treating someone, multiple someones, based on the inventory of supplies used. A soft sound displaced pebble, drew his attention to one of the chamber's shadowed alcoves. Batman turned slowly, deliberately non-threatening. "I'm not here to harm anyone," he said, his voice controlled but carrying in the acoustic space. "I'm looking for missing people." Silence stretched for several heartbeats before a voice, female, hoarse with disuse, emerged from the darkness. "They're not missing, they're hiding. There's a difference." A figure emerged partially from the shadows, a woman in her 40s, her clothing practical but weathered, her hand clutching a makeshift walking stick. Despite her defensive posture, Batman recognized Dr. Sarah Keeler from her file photo. "Hiding from what, Dr. Keeler?" he asked quietly. Her laugh held no humor. Not what, who, the same people who've always hunted those who are different. She gestured vaguely upward, toward the city above. The ones who decide who belongs and who doesn't. Batman remained still, creating space for her to continue. The dripping water provided a gentle percussion behind her words. I came down here following a patient, she continued after a moment. A child with a rare condition. Photosensitivity so severe she couldn't bear daylight. Her parents abandoned her when treatment became too expensive. Her voice cracked slightly. I thought I was rescuing her. Instead, she brought me somewhere I was actually needed. To Croc, Batman said softly. It wasn't a question. Dr. Keeler's expression hardened. To Waylon, and to the others he's protected. The ones like him, not physically perhaps, but in the ways that matter. The forgotten, the abandoned, the ones labeled as monsters by a world that couldn't bear to face its own monstrosity in casting them aside. The implications settled between them like the mist that hung in the chamber's cool air. Not abductions then, but sanctuary. Not victims, but refugees from a world that had no place for them. Where are they now? Batman asked. Dr. Keeler studied him, wariness evident in her posture. Why should I tell you? So you can drag them back to a world that rejected them, or lock Waylon away again? Because something else is happening down here, Batman replied evenly. Something that concerns you enough that you're separated from the others, living alone in this chamber when your patients clearly need you. Her startled expression confirmed his assessment. The doctor glanced toward one of the deeper passages leading from the chamber, her grip tightening on the walking stick. How did you know? Your supplies are defensive rather than comfortable. You've positioned yourself to monitor that passage. You're expecting trouble, but not from above. Batman took a careful step forward. What's happening down here, Doctor? What's threatening Croc's sanctuary? Dr. Keeler's composure wavered, exhaustion and worry briefly overwhelming her caution. I don't know exactly. It started about 2 weeks ago. Strange noises from the deeper tunnels. Then some of our supplies went missing. Then, she swallowed hard. 2 of our people disappeared. Not back to the surface, they just vanished from the lower chambers. And Croc? Waylon went to investigate. He told me to stay here, to guard the passage to where the others are hiding. She gestured to her medical kit. I'm no fighter, but I'm the only doctor they have. Batman processed this information, adjusting his understanding of the situation. I need to find out what's happening in those deeper tunnels, he said finally. Not to harm Croc or disrupt his sanctuary, but to ensure everyone's safety, his people included. Dr. Keeler's skepticism was evident, but so was her desperation. How do I know I can trust you? Because I understand what it means to create a safe haven beneath the city, Batman replied simply. And I know that monsters are often made, not born. Something in his tone must have reached her, because after a long moment, Dr. Keeler nodded reluctantly. There's a child who might help you. Lily, the girl I followed down here initially, she's special. She can navigate the tunnels better than anyone, despite her blindness. More importantly, Waylon trusts her. Where can I find her? Deacon Keeler hesitated, then made her decision. 2 chambers deeper, through the flooded passage. Tell her I sent you. If she believes you're genuinely here to help, she might guide you to where you need to go. Batman nodded, then removed several specialized medical supplies from his utility belt. Antibiotics and pain management tools, more advanced than what the doctor's kit contained. For your patients, he said, placing them carefully beside her medical supplies. Her surprise was evident, but she accepted the offering with a nod of acknowledgement. As Batman turned toward the passage she'd indicated, Dr. Keeler called after him softly. The water gets deeper before the next chamber. Even you might find it challenging. I'm prepared for difficult passages, he replied. Something like grim amusement crossed her face. It's not the passage that's difficult, Batman. It's what occasionally moves through it. The implication hung in the damp air between them, a reminder that in this underground domain he was the visitor in territories belonging to creatures more at home in the darkness than even the Dark Knight himself. The passage Dr. Keeler had indicated narrowed considerably, the ceiling dropping until Batman had to wade through knee-deep water in a crouch. His cowl's systems analyzed the water automatically, elevated mineral content, traces of organic material, but nothing immediately dangerous. The temperature was surprisingly warm, suggesting connection to deeper geological features beneath Gotham. Alfred, I'm tracking through a flooded section, he sub-vocalized. The passage appears to be following a natural aquifer. I have your position, Alfred confirmed. The old city plans show nothing in that area you've moved beyond mapped territory. The sonic mapping is updating as I progress. There appears to be a larger chamber approximately 50 meters ahead. Batman continued forward, the water gradually deepening to waist height. His movements remained deliberate and nearly silent, creating minimal disturbance in the water's surface. His senses remained alert, particularly to vibrations in the water around him. In such confined spaces, he'd have minimal maneuverability if confronted by something large. A subtle current tugged at him, suggesting water movement ahead. As the passage began widening, the ceiling lifting enough for him to stand upright, Batman detected a change in the acoustic properties of the space. Sound carried differently, the dripping water creating more complex echoes. He emerged into the promised chamber, this one significantly larger than the last. Unlike the previous natural cavern, this space showed signs of deliberate expansion. Tool marks on the walls, strategically placed support beams reinforcing the ceiling at crucial junctures. Most striking was the illumination. Bioluminescent fungi cultivated along the walls, casting the entire chamber in a soft blue-green glow that eliminated the need for artificial light. The water here formed a pool, covering roughly half the chamber, the rest rising to create a dry stone shelf. On this natural platform, Batman could see evidence of habitation, more sophisticated than Dr. Keeler's simple camp. Blankets and cushions arranged in sleeping areas, containers of supplies organized by type, books, games, even simple musical instruments. No one was immediately visible, but Batman's enhanced senses detected a presence. The subtle shift of breathing, the nearly imperceptible movement of someone trying to remain perfectly still. He made no sudden movements, instead moving slowly to the edge of the water pool and waiting. Dr. Keeler sent me, he said, his voice calm and measured. I'm looking for Lily. Silence stretched for several heartbeats before a small voice responded from behind a cluster of stone formations. How do I know she really sent you? She told me about your condition, Batman replied, that you can't tolerate sunlight, that she followed you down here thinking she was rescuing you. A slight shuffling sound, then a child emerged partially from concealment. A girl, perhaps 10 years old, her eyes milky white with blindness, her pale skin nearly translucent in the bioluminescent glow. Despite her inability to see in the conventional sense, her head tracked Batman's position with uncanny accuracy. You're him, she said simply. The Bat. Wayland talks about you sometimes. Does he? Batman kept his tone neutral. The girl's smile was unexpected and surprisingly warm. Not always bad things. He says you fight monsters too, just different kinds. She tilted her head. as if listening to something beyond normal hearing. "Why are you here, really?" "Something is happening in the deeper tunnels," Batman replied honestly. "Something that's taken people from Crocs, from Wayland's community. I want to help find out what's happening and stop it." Lily considered this, her unseeing eyes somehow still evaluative. "Wayland went to find them 3 days ago. He hasn't come back." Worry crept into her voice despite her obvious attempt at bravery. "The others are scared. They think whatever took Marco and Eliza got him too." "Where are the others now?" "Safer place. Deeper chamber with only one entrance, easier to defend." She gestured vaguely toward another passage leading from the chamber. "I stayed here to listen for Wayland coming back." Batman nodded, understanding the strategy. "You can hear things others can't." "I can feel things," she corrected. "Vibrations in the water, in the stone, air movements." She pointed unerringly toward Batman. "Your heartbeat is slow and steady, even though you're in strange territory." "That's interesting." "Lily, I need to find Wayland and discover what's happening in the deeper tunnels. Will you help me?" The child was silent for a long moment, her head tilted as if listening to distant sounds. Finally, she nodded. "I'll take you to where he went. After that..." She shrugged, a surprisingly adult gesture. "Depends what we find." "Thank you," Batman said simply. Lily moved toward the far passage with confident steps despite her blindness. "The water gets deeper before it gets shallower," she warned, "and colder, much colder." As they proceeded toward the passage, Batman noticed something he'd initially overlooked. Small, child-sized drawings affixed to one wall of the chamber. Simple but effective renderings of people, some with visible physical differences, some without, all holding hands in a circle. At the center of the circle, a large, scaled figure with protective arms outstretched. The image provided a moment of insight more valuable than any data analysis. From the perspective of those who'd found refuge here, Killer Croc wasn't their jailer or exploiter. He was their protector, creating a community where their differences weren't merely tolerated, but understood. The moral complexity of the situation deepened, like the waters they were about to enter, a reminder that beneath Gotham's surface, both literally and figuratively, simplistic judgments rarely captured the full truth of how people survived in a world that offered them limited options for belonging. Lily led Batman through passages that grew increasingly challenging, the natural formation of the catacombs following some ancient watercourse that had carved these spaces eons before Gotham existed. The water deepened as she had warned, at times forcing them to swim through completely submerged sections. Batman was impressed with the child's navigation. She moved with absolute confidence, occasionally pausing to place her hands against the stone walls, as if reading some invisible map through touch alone. "How do you find your way?" Batman asked during one brief rest on a stone ledge, water cascading around them from some unseen source above. Lily smiled, running her fingers along the rough stone surface. "Everything down here has a voice if you know how to listen. Water sounds different depending on what's ahead. Open spaces make echoes, narrow passages create pressure, and the stones..." She pressed her palm flat against the wall. "They may remember the old shapes of things, the way water carved them. I can feel which way it wants to flow." Batman recognized something profound in her explanation, an entirely different way of perceiving the world, born of necessity, but developed into something approaching wisdom. "You taught this to the others? To Wayland?" She laughed softly, the sound mingling with the water's gentle music. "Wayland already knew his own way of listening, but yes, I helped the new ones learn how to hear the tunnels, how to feel safe down here." They continued onward, the passage eventually opening into another chamber, this one dominated by a fast-moving underground stream cutting through its center. The bioluminescent fungi were less prevalent here, the darkness deeper and more complete. Batman's cowl adjusted automatically, enhancing what little light existed. Lily paused at the chamber's edge, her head tilted in that now familiar listening pose. "Something's different," she murmured. The water's voice has changed. Batman scanned the chamber, noting signs of recent disturbance. Scuff marks on the stone floor, a fallen support beam, scattered supplies. There was a struggle here, he observed quietly. The girl nodded, moving carefully forward with one hand extended. She knelt beside the underground stream, dipping her fingers into the rushing water. "Something blocked the old passage and made the water find a new way," she said, frowning. "That's why it sounds wrong." Batman examined the far wall where the stream disappeared. The sonic mapping equipment in his cowl revealed what physical examination confirmed. A recent cave-in had partially blocked the natural water flow, forcing it to carve a new channel through softer stone. "Was this the way Wayland went?" he asked. Lily nodded. "The deeper nesting chambers are beyond, where the water is stillest and the air is warmest." She hesitated, unusual uncertainty crossing her features. "But something else is there now, too. I can feel it when I touch the water. A wrongness." Batman approached the collapse section, analyzing the debris pattern. "This wasn't natural," he concluded. "The support structures were deliberately damaged." He found tool marks on the remaining support beams, precise cuts that would ensure failure when stressed. "Someone wanted to block the passage," Lily said softly. "To keep us out, or to keep something in, or to slow Wayland down," Batman added, his mind working through the tactical implications. "Forcing him to find another route, perhaps one less advantageous." The girl's expression sharpened with concern. "We need to find him, now." Batman studied the collapsed passage and the newly formed water channel. "The water carved a path," he said. "Narrow, but potentially navigable." He knelt beside Lily. "I can go through, but it might be too dangerous for you to—" "I'm coming," she interrupted with quiet determination. "I know these tunnels better than you ever could, and Wayland trusts me." A small, knowing smile touched her lips. "He doesn't trust you." "Not yet." Batman acknowledged the truth in her statement with a nod. "Stay close. The passage will be tight and the current is strong." Together they entered the water channel, Batman going first to clear any debris while Lily followed close behind. The passage narrowed dramatically, forcing them to proceed with only their heads above water, then to fully submerge for short stretches. Batman kept track of the girl with unfailing awareness, impressed by her composure in conditions that would terrify most children. They emerged eventually into a space unlike any they had encountered previously. This chamber was vast, its ceiling lost in darkness despite Batman's enhanced vision. Unlike the natural formations they'd traversed, this space showed signs of deliberate construction. Ancient brick archways, crumbling stone staircases leading to higher galleries, ornate columns supporting what must have been a significant structure in Gotham's earliest days. "What is this place?" Batman asked, his voice hushed in the cavernous space. Lily tilted her head, taking in the acoustics. "Wayland calls it the Forgotten Court. Says it was important once, when Gotham was young, before they built new things on top and left this behind." Batman's historical knowledge filled in the gaps. They had found the remains of old Gotham's original municipal buildings, long since buried beneath the modern city's foundations. Once the literal foundation of Gotham's governance, now flooded and forgotten, existing only as ghost architecture beneath the streets. Multiple passages led from the chamber at various levels, some fully submerged, others high and dry. The water they stood in formed a shallow lake covering the chamber's floor, its surface disturbed only by their presence, and the gentle inflow from the passage they traversed. "Where would Wayland go from here?" Batman asked. Lily was unusually still, her head moving in small increments as she processed information beyond Batman's perception. "Something's wrong," she whispered. "The water. It's carrying strange vibrations, not natural." Batman extended his senses, filtering through the ambient sounds of dripping water and settling stone. Then he caught it, a subtle mechanical hum, so low in frequency it was barely perceptible. His cowl's systems analyzed and isolated the sound, tracing it to one of the higher passages. "Machinery," he confirmed. "Someone has brought technology down here." Lily nodded, her expression troubled. Wayland would have followed that sound. He's protective of these deep places, doesn't like outsiders bringing their world into ours. "Our path, then, is clear," Batman said, already moving toward the stone staircase that would lead them to the source of the disturbance. He paused when he realized Lily wasn't following, instead moving toward the water's edge with her head cocked in intense concentration. "Wait," she said softly. "There's something else in the water." Batman returned to her side, studying the dark surface. For a moment, nothing seemed amiss in the gently lapping water. Then, a subtle movement, a ripple that didn't match the natural patterns of the chamber. "Something's coming," Lily whispered, backing away slowly. "Something big." The water's surface broke suddenly as a massive, scaled form erupted from the depths. Killer Croc, his powerful bulk rising like some primordial force from the murky lake. His yellow eyes fixed immediately on Batman, a rumbling growl vibrating through the chamber as he positioned himself protectively before Lily. "You bring him to our sanctuary," Croc snarled, addressing the child while keeping his gaze locked on Batman. "After everything I told you about the bat?" "He's here to help, Wayland," Lily replied, her voice steady despite the tension crackling through the chamber. "Dr. Keeler sent him. People are missing." Croc's massive shoulders remained tense, his posture unmistakably defensive. "People are always missing in Gotham. Doesn't usually bring the bat into my territory." "I'm not here for you, Croc," Batman said calmly. "I'm here about what's happening in the deeper tunnels. The machinery we can both hear." Croc's eyes narrowed, reptilian pupils contracting in the dim light. "You seem to know about them, the ones who came from below." "Tell me," Batman prompted, maintaining a non-threatening stance. For a long moment, Croc seemed to wrestle with some internal debate, his massive frame still poised for potential combat. Then, surprisingly, Lily moved forward and placed her small hand on his scaled arm. The gesture seemed to center the massive figure, his breathing slowing as he glanced down at the child. "He really is here to help," she said quietly. "I've listened to his heart. He's worried about the same people you are." Something shifted in Croc's expression, not quite softening, but a subtle change nonetheless. He turned back to Batman, his voice a low rumble that echoed through the chamber. 3 weeks ago, we started hearing digging, machinery, coming from the deepest tunnels, ones even I don't go into often. He gestured toward the higher passage. Then people started disappearing. My people, the ones who came here for safety. A flash of genuine anguish crossed his normally impassive features. I promised them protection. Now they're gone. "What did you find when you investigated?" Batman asked. "Men, armed, using machines to excavate new tunnels, set up some kind of operation." Croc's massive jaw clenched. "They have containers, holding cells. I saw Marco in one before they spotted me. Had to retreat or they would have collapsed more tunnels." The pieces began falling into place in Batman's analytical mind. Not random abductions, he concluded. Targeted ones. They're taking people who won't be missed by the world above. Croc's rumbling growl confirmed the assessment. People the surface world threw away. Easy targets. But for what purpose? Batman pressed. The massive figure shook his head. Don't know, but they have the smell of Crane about them. The mention of Scarecrow changed the entire complexion of the situation. Jonathan Crane's twisted experiments often required human subjects, and his ethical constraints were non-existent. Show me, Batman said simply. Croc studied him for a long moment, seemingly weighing his options. Finally, he nodded once, a curt gesture that acknowledged their temporary alignment without suggesting trust. Lily stays here, he growled. Too dangerous. The child started to protest, but Batman interceded. He's right. We need someone to warn the others if we don't return. He knelt to her level. You've guided me this far. Now I need you to keep the others safe, while Croc and I investigate. Lily's unseeing eyes somehow still managed to convey intense scrutiny. You'll bring them back? All of them? Everyone we can, Batman promised. She nodded, apparently satisfied. The water will tell me if you succeed, she said simply. It carries the truth of things, if you know how to listen. As Batman and Croc prepared to venture deeper into Gotham's forgotten places, their unlikely alliance crystallized around a shared purpose. Despite their history as adversaries, in this subterranean world, traditional boundaries blurred like ripples across dark water. Here, beneath the weight of an entire city, what mattered wasn't past confrontations, but the immediate protection of those who had sought refuge in the darkness. A common cause that brought together the Dark Knight and the creature known as Killer Croc, in an alignment that neither would have predicted possible in the world above. The passage Croc led them through climbed steadily upward, transitioning from the flooded chambers below to drier tunnels that showed signs of recent excavation. The natural stone gave way to sections of brick and concrete, remnants of Gotham's earlier infrastructure now incorporated into whatever operation they were tracking. Ventilation shaft ahead, Croc rumbled, his voice barely above a whisper yet still resonating in the confined space. Lets us see into their main chamber without being detected. Batman nodded, following the massive figure with silent footsteps. Despite Croc's size, he moved with surprising stealth through these familiar tunnels, his scaled body seeming to blend with the shadows in a way that reminded Batman that Waylon Jones had survived in this environment for years through cunning as much as strength. They reached the shaft, a narrow opening in the tunnel ceiling, filtered light streaming down in dusty beams. Batman used his grapnel to ascend first, positioning himself at the edge of the opening to survey what lay beyond. Croc followed, climbing the rough stone wall with practiced ease, his claws finding purchase where others would slip. The scene below confirmed Batman's growing suspicions. A cavernous chamber had been converted into a makeshift laboratory, clinical workstations arranged in precise rows, sophisticated equipment humming with electrical power supplied by portable generators. Personnel in hazard suits moved between stations, their attention focused on monitoring equipment and what appeared to be containment units along the far wall. Scarecrow's operation, Batman confirmed in a whisper. The equipment's signatures match his known experimental protocols. Croc's low growl vibrated through the stone. The containers along the wall. That's where they're keeping my people. Batman focused his cowl's enhanced vision on the containment units, transparent cells, each holding a single person. Some appeared unconscious, others awake but subdued. Monitoring equipment attached to each unit recorded vital signs and other data. Test subjects, Batman said grimly. Crane is developing something new. Then let's tear his operation apart, Croc snarled, muscles tensing for action. Batman placed a restraining hand on the scaled arm, a gesture that would have been unthinkable in any other context. Direct confrontation puts the hostages at risk. We need to understand what we're dealing with first. Croc's yellow eyes narrowed, but he offered no further argument, seemingly acknowledging the tactical wisdom. Batman activated his cowl's enhanced audio capabilities, isolating conversations from the laboratory floor below. Two technicians were comparing notes near one of the workstations, their voices now clear in his audio feed. Third batch shows promising properties, one was saying. Absorption rates increased by 40% when administered through water rather than aerosol. Delivery mechanism still presents challenges, the second replied. Urban water systems have too many filtration checkpoints. Crane wants something that can bypass standard municipal safeguards. Peace, he said. That's why we're testing it here first, the first technician continued. Isolated water system, contained population, perfect control conditions. The implications chilled Batman more than the damp catacombs ever could. They're developing a water-soluble fear toxin, he sub-vocalized to Alfred, using the underground water systems as a test environment, and the people in Croc's community as unwitting test subjects. Alfred's voice replied through the cowl. Dear God. Croc had clearly deduced the same conclusion, a murderous rage building in his expression. They're poisoning our water, he growled, using my people as lab rats. We need to shut down this operation completely, Batman agreed, and secure samples of whatever they're developing for an antidote. He surveyed the laboratory layout, counting personnel and identifying key systems. We need to free the hostages first, then neutralize the facility. Croc's massive jaw set in determination. I can create a distraction, draw them away from the cells. Batman nodded, the plan forming with tactical precision. I'll secure the hostages and obtain samples. When they're safe, we destroy the lab and all research materials. The unlikely allies exchanged a look of perfect understanding. In this moment, their usual animosity suspended by a greater purpose. Without further discussion, they moved to execute their plan, each accepting their role with the gravity the situation demanded. Croc disappeared down a side passage, his knowledge of the tunnel system allowing him to circle around to the chamber's far entrance. Batman remained in position, waiting for the distraction that would create his opportunity. Minutes passed in tense silence, broken only by the mechanical hums from the laboratory below and the distant drip of water that formed a constant background rhythm in these subterranean depths. Then it came, a tremendous crash, followed by shouts of alarm as Croc burst through a weakened wall section on the opposite side of the laboratory. His appearance created instant chaos, personnel abandoning workstations to flee the rampaging figure who seemed to embody their worst nightmares made flesh. Batman seized the moment, descending swiftly into the chamber and moving directly toward the containment units. The lab technicians were focused entirely on the threat Croc presented, allowing Batman to reach the cells undetected. Each was secured with electronic locks, sophisticated but no match for his decryption technology. I'm releasing you, he told the first conscious captive, a man whose physical deformities had likely made him an outcast in the world above. Can you help the others? The man nodded, relief and determination mixing in his expression. We take care of our own. As Batman worked methodically through the remaining locks, Croc continued his calculated rampage, destroying equipment but carefully avoiding harm to any personnel. His role was distraction, not vengeance, at least for now. The priority remained the safety of his community members. With the captives freed, Batman moved to the central workstation, downloading research data and securing samples of the compound. The laboratory's alarm systems had finally activated, suggesting additional security would soon arrive. They needed to complete their mission and evacuate quickly. The hostages are secure, Batman communicated to Croc. Time to end this facility. Croc needed no further instruction. With terrifying efficiency, he targeted the laboratory's infrastructure. Power generators, support columns, key equipment. Batman, meanwhile, planted small explosive charges at strategic points, ensuring the operation couldn't be quickly rebuilt. As they prepared to retreat with the freed captives, Batman noticed one lab technician attempting to secure research samples. He moved to intercept, but Croc was faster, capturing the man in one massive clawed hand. "Please," the technician begged, terror evident. "I'm just following orders. Crane will kill me if I lose his research." "And what about my people?" Croc growled, his voice deadly quiet. "The ones you were using as test animals?" Batman approached carefully, aware of the delicate moral balance in this moment. "He'll face justice," he said firmly, "but not here. Not like this." For a tense moment, Croc seemed poised to ignore Batman's counsel. Then, surprisingly, he lowered the terrified technician to the ground. "Your kind of justice never seems to stick," he rumbled. "And I won't become what they already think I am." The restraint demonstrated more humanity than many would credit Waylon Jones with possessing, reinforcing Batman's growing understanding of the complex figure before him. Not simply a monster, but a protector in his own way, fierce in defense of those under his care, yet capable of moral choices that defied simplistic categorization. With the charges set and the captives gathered, they retreated into the tunnel network. Batman triggered the explosives remotely once they'd reached safe distance, the muffled rumble of the destruction reverberating through the stone around them. The laboratory was neutralized, Crane's research set back significantly, though Batman harbored no illusions that the threat was permanently eliminated. As they led the rescued community members back toward the safety of Croc's sanctuary, Batman observed the interactions between the massive, scaled figure and those he protected. There was genuine relief in their reunions, trust in their communications, even a kind of familial warmth in how the youngest among them approached Croc without fear. In the flooded chamber where Lily waited, the reunions were particularly poignant. The blind girl somehow knew they were coming before they arrived, meeting them at the water's edge with uncanny precision. Her joy at sensing Croc's return was evident, as was her relief when she confirmed the rescued community members were with them. "The water told me you were successful," she said simply, her unseeing eyes directed unerringly toward Batman. "It carries the sound of many heartbeats returning." Later, as the community settled back into their sanctuary, Batman found himself in an unexpected conversation with Croc at the chamber's edge, the gentle lapping of water punctuating their exchange. "What happens now?" Croc asked, his normally aggressive demeanor subdued by exhaustion and lingering concern. "You've seen our sanctuary, know where to find us." Batman considered his response carefully. "Your community stays your community," he said finally. "I'll ensure the samples we recovered are used to develop protection against Crane's toxin, in case he tries again." Croc studied him with those unreadable reptilian eyes. "And us? You're not here to shut us down? Force everyone back to the surface that rejected them? This isn't a criminal operation, Croc. It's a refuge." Batman gestured toward where Lily was helping tend to one of the rescued captives. "These people have found something here they couldn't find above. Protection, acceptance, community, even from a monster like me." There was a challenge in Croc's tone, but also a genuine question. Batman met his gaze directly. "I've seen enough real monsters to know the difference between them and someone society merely labeled as one. The acknowledgement hung between them. Not quite trust, but a recognition more profound than either had expected to discover in these depths. Batman continued after a moment. I can help make this place safer, properly stabilize some of the deteriorating sections, ensure clean water flow. Croc's surprise was evident, quickly masked by suspicion. Why would you do that? Because everyone deserves sanctuary, Batman replied simply. Even those the world above has forgotten. As Batman prepared to return to the surface, Dr. Keeler approached with medical supplies gathered in her arms. I've analyzed the samples you provided, she said. Started working on treatment protocols for those who were exposed. With the right equipment, you'll have what you need, Batman assured her. Alfred will arrange deliveries through secure channels. The doctor nodded, gratitude evident in her expression. They won't go back, you know. Most of them have nowhere to return to, and some have found something better here. Batman finished. I understand. He departed through the passages they'd traversed earlier, Lily guiding him part of the way before turning back to her underground home. At the final junction before the surface access point, Batman paused to look back at the tunnel network stretching into darkness behind him. Beneath Gotham's streets, in chambers forgotten by the world above, an unlikely community had found what many in the brightness of day still searched for: acceptance, protection, belonging. Led by a figure most would consider a monster, they had created a haven where differences were strengths rather than stigmas, where the abandoned had built something precious from what the world had discarded. As Batman emerged into Gotham's night, the persistent rain had finally ceased, leaving the city washed clean under a sky where stars occasionally peeped through breaking clouds. He stood momentarily on a rooftop, water dripping from his cape, as he gazed across the urban landscape that held so many stories, some played out in plain sight, others hidden in shadows or depths most would never see. The city above continued its restless existence, largely unaware of the complex world beneath its streets. But Batman would remember, and in the quiet moments between Gotham's crises, he would ensure that those who had found sanctuary in the darkness would maintain their fragile peace, protected not just by scaled hands and darkness, but by the silent guardianship of the Dark Knight who understood, perhaps better than most, that monsters are often made, not born, and that redemption sometimes comes in the most unexpected forms and places. In the wet catacombs below, water continued its eternal journey through stone passages, carrying whispers of a different kind now, not of fear, but of a sanctuary preserved, where those rejected by the world above had found, in their own way, a place to belong. And so our tale of Gotham comes to an end. Let the gentle night embrace you as you drift toward peaceful dreams, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, the Dark Knight watches over his city. If you're not asleep yet, we will now play the ambience of Gotham City at night to help you fall asleep. And if you were just listening to our tales, we will see you next time. Good night and sleep well.